Alright guys, this is jerningham here. More talk about the restrictions of lockdown rules in the UK and probably be talking about Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, or could be talking about other things. But anyway, I'm going to play the video. Just going to put it on here. I'm going to... Yeah. As one would say to me. Let's the video on play now. Play the video, thank you people. Thank you very much. As one would say to me. Play the video with controller.
The UK's second biggest city, now with the second highest COVID rate in England. Rising cases here reflecting a trend sweeping across the rest of the country. Although anticipated, this still delivers a devastating blow for getting on top of virus numbers. This crucial figure, looking at the virus's ability to spread, is now between 1 and 1.2 across the UK. That's true for England too. But in London and the Northwest, the upper estimate is 1.3. In Scotland, it could be as high as 1.5. Northern Ireland, 1.4. While in Wales, the range is between 0.5 and 1. If R is greater than 1, the epidemic is growing. A study which released their latest data today estimate R at around 1.7 and say COVID cases in England are doubling every 7 to 8 days. Even though numbers aren't as high in Scotland and Wales, both nations say the rule of only meeting 6 people inside will now apply.
I didn't want to announce them, and I'm sure that none of you wanted to hear them. But in our judgment, imposing more restrictions now on how people meet up is necessary to avoid a stricter lockdown later.
We have, I believe, a short window to get ahead of a gathering storm and to help us avoid more draconian measures.
Rules were tightened in several areas of Northern Ireland late last night, including Belfast and Ballymena, with restrictions on home visits. And with this, the number of people wanting to get a test is also going up. The British Medical Association said even some GPs were struggling to get one. Dr. Khalida Siraj and her husband, who's also a doctor, tried to get tests after their 5-year-old son fell ill with a high temperature.
My husband tried ringing up first initially 111, then 119, and then went onto the website. And he managed to sort of get some test or booked in for somewhere in Waltham Forest. So as he was trying to book that in, it just was no longer available. So what we did is we called up friends and neighbours and actually got one done privately through a friend. A friend gave us a private test kit that they had, and we had to do it like that. And then it was only by getting the result negative that we were able to relax and know we were safe to go back to work.
In a house full of doctors, how important is it for you to get tested?
We are in the front line. We can spread it. If we have it and we're asymptomatic carriers, we potentially could spread it to a lot of people.
As some say they're struggling to get tests, the government announced a new part of their testing strategy. Their long-awaited app will be released in England and Wales in just over 2 weeks. Using a QR code, you'll be able to scan into pubs, restaurants and bars. It's hoped this will help contact tracers.
Download the Stop COVID NI app to help stop the spread.
Northern Ireland have had theirs from July, which works by identifying people who have been experiencing symptoms. In Scotland, their app was released yesterday.
Or share your identity.
While rising cases are concerning, this isn't the same situation as pre-lockdown. Hospitalisations are lower and so are the number of deaths. There are also more measures which have been put in place. Social distance warning signs and the smell of hand sanitizer is the norm in these university halls which opened this week. For these students, they believe life just has to go on.
I think things have to go back to normal. The universities are doing their best to sort of test and trace. They have different measures in place with social distancing and physical distancing.
I think it's relatively safe. The policies are being followed. I don't see any reason to be worried.
COVID-19 will remain a major challenge until we have a vaccine that works. Until then, it will be life as near to normal as we can get for now.
Well, Birmingham now has the second highest rate of COVID-19 infections in England, just behind Bolton. Households in the UK's second largest city have been banned from mixing with new restrictions coming into force there and in neighbouring Sandwell and Solihull on Tuesday. Our Home Affairs correspondent Darshna Soni is there. Darshna.
Well, health officials here have described this as a critical moment in their battle against the virus. Birmingham has seen its infection rate rise by more than 200% in the last 7 days. Its infection rate now stands at 90.3 per 100,000. That compares to 160 in Bolton, just for information for comparison. The data suggests that the virus is being spread in people's households. And so from Tuesday, the new restrictions mean you won't be able to mix with anybody else from another household. They won't be able to visit you in your home, you won't be able to go to their home or meet them in the garden. But there was confusion about whether you could meet them in a pub or a restaurant or a cafe, all of which are staying open. The leader of Birmingham's council was asked about this today. He was speaking at a video conference with a panel of other speakers.
You can continue to go to the pub or a restaurant in a maximum group of 6. So that would allow you to meet with another household in the pub or a restaurant. The reason for this difference is because the data and the information that we're gathering is telling us that it is households gathering together in one home where they are spreading the virus.
What about the police response, Darshna? Will they be able to enforce this?
Flip check.
Well, this is a huge area. Some 1.6 million people come under the new restrictions. The police will obviously be stretched, and they admitted today they will have to target certain areas. The data suggests that wards with higher proportions of ethnic minorities have seen the highest number of increase in cases. But the government is very aware of criticism that some communities are feeling targeted by these local lockdowns. You'll remember that there was a row in northern England when new restrictions were introduced the night before Eve. One councillor here told me that the police will have to get their messaging right.
It is all about the messaging. If Black and Asian communities feel as if they're being picked on, which then leads to racial discrimination and things happening to them where they are attacked, well then the police will have got the message wrong. It is absolutely about the health issues. We are in the middle of a pandemic and we are suffering as a community disproportionately far more than other communities. So I'm urging people, listen to the messages that are being given out there.
Well, the Chief Constable today acknowledged these concerns, and he told me it will be about openness, dialogue with these communities and transparency.
So thanks very much indeed. Well, for weeks now, we've heard anecdotal reports of people being told to travel tens, if not hundreds of miles in order to have a COVID test. Today, we put out a call on social media asking for people's experience in getting a test. Some responses were good, but many were not. Here's a snapshot. Stuart in Derby tried to book a test today, but was told he'd have to travel 50 miles for the nearest available site, while Patrick in the West Midlands found that he'd have to drive 90 miles. In Merseyside, Paul was initially told he'd have to make a journey of 100 miles to get his son tested, but when he checked later that day, he found that he could get a test just 3 miles away. Alina in East Sussex is also trying to get a test for her daughter. This morning she was told she could get tested, but only if she was willing to travel more than 50 miles. While in West Sussex, Mark was informed his nearest available test site was 140 miles away in Abervale, South Wales, a 280-mile round trip, despite there being 3 test sites within 5 miles of his home. But there were some positive experiences too. Ian in Edinburgh only had to travel 7 miles from his house to get a test, and Gavin in Glasgow also got a test locally the very same day. A snapshot. Well, joining me now from Westminster to make sense of it all is our health and social care editor, Victoria MacDonald. Victoria, what's behind these numbers?
Well, it's that R number, isn't it, that we've all come to know and not love. It's gone above 1. Some have put it as high as 1.7. I want to put that into some context. In March, it was at 3, so it's still not there yet. And we're seeing a growth in the rates of numbers. So we are seeing doubling about every week. And again, if you want to put that in context, in March, that was about every 3 days. Nevertheless, it's going in the wrong direction, and we're seeing some hospitalizations and some admissions to intensive care starting to creep up.
Now, what about Spain and France? Spain had 12,000 more positive cases in the last 24 hours. That's a really grim number.
The scientists and the government here have been constantly watching what's happening in Spain and France because they obviously do not want that to happen here. And we saw at the Downing Street press conference on Wednesday where they pointed to Belgium, actually, who reacted very quickly and put in much more strict measures, including stronger measures for wearing face masks. And that is what they want, because Belgium actually flatlined and then went down a bit. What they hope is that we can do that by putting in the rule of 6 and some of the other measures that were announced on Wednesday.
And is the rule of 6 the right thing to do at the moment?
It has proven quite controversial. Now let's look at Scotland. Scotland has put in the rule of 6, but excluding children under the age of 12. Now here they've included children in that 6 bubble because they say that you could have 6 adults and 24 children. You're therefore mixing a lot of people, transmitting more of the infection. Now there was an interesting study today, the REACT study which we get, which is about community transmission, that's real time. They found that 65% of people who were tested positive were asymptomatic when they tested and had had no symptoms in the week before. So there is that drive of people who don't even know that they're sick. And it comes back to, you were talking a bit earlier before about the testing system and talking about the test and track and trace system. The testing system we can see is not working terribly well. Track and trace is also not working very well. We were told by SAGE today that they need that to be working
Strawberry
better.
water.
And another scientist said, for goodness sake, we've got to obey
Ooh, your face full strawberry
and he said,
water.
can we ask people, please stop
Please have some strawberry water. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed that. It was a very interesting video. It was very short, I know, but I've done about 12 minutes on the video, so it goes fast. But anyway, thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Right.